Welcome to today's lesson, Hoophouse Greenhouse. We're going to learn a lot today. We will learn about the relationship between soil temperature and plant growth. We'll learn about the greenhouse effect. And we'll also learn some new vocabulary that will help us to understand and describe our world. Our first word is seasons. And we all know what the seasons are: winter, spring, summer, and fall. How we define seasons is a period of the year characterized by different weather patterns. Make sure to write down seasons in your garden journal and write that what makes seasons different is their different weather patterns. Our next word is climate. The climate is the general weather conditions in an area over a long period of time. Write down in your garden journal what you think our climate is like here. I would say our climate is pretty mild. We don't get snow, and it gets hot, but not as hot as other places. We have a nice climate. A related word is weather. The weather is how the atmosphere is behaving throughout the day, and it can change often. Each day the weather is a little bit different, but our climate stays the same over time. Microclimate. Let's break that down into its two parts. Micro represents things that are really small, like microscopic. And climate, we just learned, it has to do with weather patterns over a long period of time. So, a microclimate is the climate of a very small area, like under a rock or on top of a tree. Our next word is greenhouse. Don't forget to write it down. A greenhouse is a clear building that traps heat and protects plants from pests and the cold. I'm sure you've seen them before, but maybe you didn't know what they do. They're really important for keeping plants healthy and warm and keeping the temperatures in a smaller range so that plants aren't exposed to extreme heat or cold. Our last word is greenhouse effect. The greenhouse effect is when the sun's warmth gets trapped in the lower atmosphere of the earth. If you've heard this term before, you might know that the greenhouse effect can be really problematic. When we think about it in the context of our whole entire planet warming up, that can cause big changes around the world. But when we think about the greenhouse effect only affecting something small, like a greenhouse, it can be great to protect our plants. We're going to take a minute and try and connect some of our concepts today through the example of soil temperature and plant growth. Plants need a specific temperature in the soil to grow at their best capacity. You can see in our picture here that the plants in the middle are doing really well with strong root systems and tall plants, but the ones in the more extreme temperatures aren't doing so well. So if we want our plants to be happy, we have to grow them in the perfect climate for them. Sometimes we use greenhouses to reach that goal and to bring the temperature up a little bit, but on the opposite side of the spectrum, sometimes it's too hot because the greenhouse effect affecting our earth right now is heating things up, and plants don't do as well if it's too hot for them. Time for our activity. We're going to see what's happening in the garden with Dylan, and he's going to lead us in our own seed-starting greenhouse activity that you can do at home.
Hello everybody, welcome to our lesson today, Hoophouse Greenhouse. So in the video, we learned about what a greenhouse is and how farmers and gardeners use these structures to be able to grow certain vegetables and fruits in colder months. So what we're going to be doing here in the garden is creating our own mini greenhouse, and it's going to be an experiment for us to come back to week after week or day after day and see how this little mini greenhouse that we're creating is creating an environment that is really great for plants to grow in, or our seed to grow in for this example. So the materials you're going to need for our activity today is some kind of little pot. This is a rather large pot. You can use a pot that's even smaller than this, really. I know Ace Hardware has some really great teeny tiny little peat pots that are a great tool to use for this lesson. And then some soil. And you will also need seeds. Seeds that I find to work best for this lesson are bean seeds or pea seeds or corn seeds because they grow really fast. And then the last thing you're going to need for this lesson is a baggie. So you're going to put some soil in your little pots and give it some water. As you can see, my soil is already nice and moist. So if yours looks like this already, then you don't need to add any more water to it, but make sure that your soil is nice and moist if it isn't already. And then you're going to use your finger to poke a little hole in your pots. And we're going to take just one seed from our bag and place it in our little pot and then cover it back up with soil. For peas and beans and corn, you can plant the seed about an inch thick, which will look like maybe from the tip of your finger to your first knuckle. So you can plant it about that deep. Then you'll cover it up with that soil. And now, to put our plant in our mini greenhouse, you're gonna open up your baggie and place your pots inside. Now, can a greenhouse hold on to or retain all of that heat from the sun if I were to leave the bag open? Probably not, right? So we're gonna have to zip up our greenhouses. Now that you have your greenhouse prototype ready, we're gonna monitor it over the next couple of weeks. So you're gonna wanna make sure that you're giving your seed water every single day. So you're really keeping that soil in there nice and moist. And another thing that you'll maybe notice while you're monitoring and observing your experiment here is that the greenhouses retain something in addition to sunlight or warmth. So our greenhouses, we make them to keep the inside of them nice and warm so that certain plants that like to grow in very warm climates, we can grow them even during maybe our winter months. But there's something else that greenhouses help retain, and that thing is moisture. So you'll see the inside of your greenhouse might have little water droplets everywhere. And that's the water that's coming from the soil and being released into the air, but can't escape our greenhouse. It's staying inside of it. So that's another perk of having greenhouses, is it keeps our soil nice and moist. So have fun observing your mini greenhouse over the next couple of weeks, and thanks so much for joining us in our lesson today, everybody.